private company should, because these things are free, air, water, public.
But see, they're not free.
No,
they're being paid for by taxes.
I'm not.
See,
Well,
that's the difference.
I'm not suggesting they're free. To people, they are free. To the vast majority of the citizenry, they view them as their right and their property.
They view them as free because they've been told they were free,
Exactly.
right? But they're not.
Right.
They're being paid for by taxes.
Right.
And what's happening is that tax money is now being demanded for other things.
Right.
And so what's happening is, yeah, your water might be cheap, but if you remember the Walkerton incident, I have been in the water business in Hamilton, Ontario, as a matter of fact. If you remember the Hamilton accident, the Walkerton accident,
yes.
it was cheap. Several people died.
Yes.
So was that a good deal? Probably not, right? Our water company never killed anybody. And the reason is if we did, we'd be out of business. Walkerton's not out of business. So when you think about what's free and what's cheap,
Right.
it depends. What's happening now, and I think it is the thing that brings us to a crisis. In the past, tax money was dedicated to a lot of this infrastructure. The gas taxes went to build roads, and property taxes went to build schools, and so on. What we see now is competing demands for those tax dollars. And what government has to decide is, where is it going to dedicate those tax dollars? And the answer is, in my personal view, it should dedicate those tax dollars to issues where there are not obvious payers, and let projects where there are obvious payers pay for themselves. And we are just a financing mechanism to do that. But that's all that it is. It's a different financing mechanism. And it's basically saying to the users, if you're going to use this, then you need to pay your share of it. It's pretty simple. And water's the same, right? Water's free, but it's not the water you pay for. It's all the piping and all the treatment and all the monitoring and everything else that goes into that. That's what you pay for.
Just the part that makes it clean.
Yes, and gets it to where you want it. I mean, it's like everything else. God
So
drops.
that you can water your lawn with drinkable water.
The problem is God drops a lot of water on the earth, but it generally drops in places where people don't need it. The problem is where all the people are, He's not dropping that much water there. So somehow you got to get the water to where you.
Key element of stability, the length of the term of these deals. Here they're talking about a 50-year concession. We read about the 99-year and the 75-year toll road. That's part of what you're talking about is stability?
It's a really interesting question because it's partially true.
Doesn't that have a lot of risk to do with it? I mean, then the private sector is bearing the risk because you mentioned the Indiana toll road, where that's a 99-year lease. If that goes bad, if that $3.8 billion that's spent gets spent on other projects, like you say, competing projects, all of a sudden that's up for new regulatory change. That 99-year lease has all of a sudden gotten a lot shorter because that front-end payment is now gone. And the council members, the state senators, everybody's going to come back and say, okay, we need to renegotiate this deal. We're not getting any revenue off that road. We need to fix here, and that's where private sector brings in a lot of risk.
That's true, but if you think about just the term of a deal as one factor, it's one factor of stability. The longer is better. But the other thing about term that is important is that, as we've talked about here, infrastructure requires ongoing investment.
Right.
If you have a 5-year deal, you're going to build the road, that's it. You're not going to touch it after that.
Right.
Because the answer is you'll never have time to earn your money back.
Right.
The reason you have longer leases is so that the private sector or whoever the operator is will continue to invest with confidence he has time to earn back his investment.
Right.
And he has a reason to invest. But stability is more than that. It has to do with the risk-return trade-off. Term is one thing, revenue streams are another, ancillary opportunities is another, follow-on investments is another. Funds like ours, what we really like is a business that has follow-on investment. You make new investments. And the reason is it's a lot easier to make an investment in a business you already own than to find a new business. Right? So you want a business like the water business. That's the reason we love it, is because it has ongoing investment. You keep investing, you keep building the business. Port business is the same. You keep building the business. So term is one factor, but it's only one. But term is important if you want stability of the operation, because that's what allows the operator to continue to make those investments with confidence.
Got it. Hey, that was very interesting.
I appreciate it.
Thanks
so
a
are there
lot.
countries you won't go to? I'm thinking, I'm originally from India, and there's Madras, which has had a drought for 30 years, and there are water tanks driving around, and all the ministers own the water tanks, and people have to pay about a third of their income if they're low income just for water, for drinking water. But there's so much corruption in the government. Are there countries or places where you've looked at where you just won't go?
There's a lot of them, and I won't name them, but there's a lot of them. And the reason is exactly what you say. It is you have no confidence that you can get paid for what you did.
Right.
And so that's why government, in its role as planner, needs to think through that transparency of how you get paid. If you go into to a country and you spend $300 or $400 million building something, and then it gets nationalized,
Right.
you say, well, why did I do that? Right? And so that's one of the big keys to Mexico. If you look at what it cost to build a power plant in Mexico 25 years ago, it was probably double what it is today. And the reason was you didn't have any certainty. You didn't have any certainty that you were going to have your product purchased, the power purchased. You weren't sure you were going to be able to get fuel for it. You weren't sure you were going to be able to get workers for it. You weren't sure of anything. You look at it today, and you can build a power plant cheaper in Mexico than you can in the U.S. And the reason is because there is more certainty in Mexico than there is in the U.S. in the power sector.
Cost of financing is less, because the risk is less.
It is, and it's because the government has figured out that that's what it takes, and so the government owns the electric utility, and it's the planning mechanism, but it's also the buyer of the power. It gives you a very secure contract, and it stands behind them in good times and bad. And as a result, you can invest with confidence, and that's what brings the price down. It's not the labor cost. It is the ability to invest with confidence. And there was a point made today. That's what the infrastructure is about. Yes, labor costs go up, healthcare costs go up, lots of things go up. But if the infrastructure cost is coming down, then productivity is making up for some of those costs. And that's the key to this business. The key to the business from a government perspective is understanding that that's the trade-off. And to plan for that, and then to bring the private sector in for efficient execution, if you will.
Do you see a place in the model that you have there that'll take it into the information side of it, broadband, wireless?
Yeah, we don't do that, but it's the same difference. The example that was brought up here, the question is, do you subsidize the building of the infrastructure, or do you subsidize people who are using it? And my view is always you subsidize people who are using it, because some people don't need to be subsidized, so they should be paying the full price, right? But if you have that revenue stream built in, then that's what brings the infrastructure there. You can do that by subsidizing the users. You can do it by a tax subsidy where the government itself makes a payment to subsidize until it can get people on. But there's a variety of ways to do it. But the point being that it does apply to that infrastructure as much as it applies to anything else. Because it is commerce. The point was exactly correct. The internet is not about finding your best friend, right? It's about the commerce that comes from that, and so it's a huge benefit to the population.
It's not driving to grandma's, it's driving the truck that goes across the hauls the goods.
That's exactly
Grandma
right.
buys.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.